at least 2 minutes. Maybe few people might also join in that time.
Sure. Sure. Let's wait till say 5 and then start.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Better.
Okay.
So hi friends, good evening, and today we have a very special guest, and we will be we'll be going through a journey of understanding risk. So we all understand generally what is risk. Risk is about, we hear this word in many parlance, but today we have got a risk professional with us. Nitesh is working with Axis Bank as Senior Vice President and Head of the Operational Risk, and he handles the team of operational risk, digital risk, outsourcing risk, technology risk, BCP, and product process approval management since December 2020, since he joined Axis Bank. Nitesh is an agricultural engineer and PGDRM from IRMA, from 21st batch. He has total experience of about 22 years in financial services, with a total experience of about 17 years in risk management. Prior to Axis Bank, he was with HDFC Bank for more than 13 years in risk management function, looking after credit risk, operational risk, outsourcing risk. And prior to HDFC Bank, he had also worked with financial institutions like ICICI Bank, Fortis Financial Services, GIDC, across other areas like women empowerment and microfinance, financial advisory in infrastructure projects, renewable energies, rural infrastructure projects, etc. So he's having a very vast exposure of risk, and so with this background, I would like to start understanding now the perspective from Nitesh's angle. So Nitesh, what I would like to understand from you, we would like to understand from you, the first point is this: how do you see risk, and what type of risk are there according to your perspective?
So, I first of all, good evening, everyone. And if there are people outside India, so good afternoon and good morning as well. So welcome to this session. It's a great opportunity to speak in front of people who have joined here. And as a part of, a recording, if it is shared with, I'd be able to use my experience and share some knowledge across. And, coming back to OPJ's question, that how do you see risk? Now, risk is an opportunity, is what I see, always have been. And across my organizations, learning across the organizations where I have worked in, I have always seen wherever there is a risk, there is an opportunity to, one, learn, to improve, to earn, as people in business know. And also, unless and until you take risk, obviously with some limitation, with some calculation, with some mitigants and controls in place, you will grow only if you take risk. And risk is always that you take whenever you are either in your class 10, 12, you are in your engineering, your graduation, you are taking risk as a part of your journey, as part of your IRMA journey. Sometimes you take risk by, dividing time. It is important to understand that time is also and always risk comes with a level of resource that you have is very important when you take risk. So today the banking industry is running with a crisis on deposits. So liquidity is one of the key risks that the banks currently have. And in order to grow with the growing economy in India, there is a challenge that banks face with the level of investment which comes from mutual funds, or the value of investment which comes from mutual fund markets, because markets are moving. So people rarely go into the deposits or, the CASA, which is called current account, savings account, and the fixed deposit. So these are the areas where, when I see risk, the risk is all around. And I am talking about a financial industry, but risk is all around. Whether you are driving a car, there is a risk. And obviously, there is a possibility, there is an opportunity, there is a resource that you have, and that's how. I am an ardent Formula One fan, so they take risks which are huge in nature as compared to us. They have risk which we don't even, and they, just to give a perspective, in one race of 1.5 hours, they lose 4 to 5 kgs. So that is the kind of G forces that they have, and they have been taking risk, and they get rewards. So suitably rewarded in terms of money as well as recognition across the world. So the number of people recognizing them, the brand value, that is how people grow in the organization. That's how an organization can be family, organization can be friends, organization can be your institution where you have studied, or organization can be any workplace, your own organization. And people, there are people who have taken risks very early in their career. To your right, Mr. Deepak Alo, he had taken a risk of becoming an entrepreneur at a very young age, since he passed out of IRMA, and he's doing absolutely great. So that is how you see risk and rewards always comes hand in hand. But taking the jump needs careful understanding of the resource, careful understanding of the future, and not getting biased by what has happened in the past. I would see it's like driving a car. You have a windscreen, right? And you have a rear view mirror as well. So you'll see a lot of things which has happened in the past visible in the rear view mirror, but you also have a big windscreen, and that's the windscreen which is bigger than the rear view mirror. So if you see the mirror, it is smaller, but you can see the picture which has gone, because there is a convex mirror. You can see a larger picture, but in small. But the windscreen is larger. You can see the bigger picture. You can see growth. You can see opportunity there to make good of whatever is coming in front of you.
So when you said that risk is an opportunity, that's a beautiful perspective, and that coming to from a risk specialist, that makes it more special, because I'm also from the financial industry, so we look at the risk into a different angle. So you said the risk is an opportunity. That's a wonderful way of looking
Actually,
at the things.
when we work with teams, I always tell you have to make the people on the other side believe that you are there to fulfill certain roles which they are not able to fulfill because they are busy sourcing. So you have to build in controls which can help them source better, source more, and make the business grow.
Definitely. And what from the financial perspective, if you look at, then how do we look at the risk? So, and what are the types and categories of risk, if you look at that domain?
So when not only financial, any organization will have two categories of risk. One is a financial risk, the other one is non-financial risk. And when you look at the financial risk, you will have a credit risk, you have a market risk. You have a market, means it is not a financial market, it can be any market. You have a business risk. You have if you have a product, you have a product risk. If you have a process, you have a process risk. Now, when you look at the financial side of it, you have market, liquidity, resource management is one of the risks. I would say then there is counterparty risk. So in a bank, there is other banks or other participants in the market who are playing. In a product company or in a non-financial company, there are counterparties who play a large role in terms of the supply chain, in terms of the product, in terms of the inventory, in terms of the sales channel, the distribution channel. So there are a lot of financial risks which are there. Obviously, there are other risks in terms of interest rate risk. You have exchange risk. You have foreign exchange risk. You have, and if I come to non-financial risk, which is my domain, so I see a large part of non-financial risk getting categorized into 2 or 3 areas. One is basically you're saying IT risk, which comprises of information security and core IT risk, means technology risk. And from a non-technology risk, you have a large set: operational risk, conduct risk, you have legal risk, you have reputational risk, you have country risk, you have political risk, you have ESG risk, which is very high in demand today. You have outsourcing risk, you have BCP, that is the resilience risk, and many more. If you search, you can get a lot. So I would say that a distinct feature, and I'm fairly biased toward the financial industry, having stayed in that industry for a long period of time. A large part of my distribution of risk is, how I classify is more from there. Obviously, product companies and IT companies will have a different set of risks, but it all boils down to some part or the other coming out of this as well.
Okay, so basically you are saying that risk is a very, it's a wide domain thing, and many things gets covered into that. And well, since you are heading the operational risk at Axis Bank, so specifically if we look at the things which you look in Axis Bank, and the kind of thing which kind of risk, operational risk, comes under your purview, if you can throw some light on that, please, also.
So let's say if an organization or a bank like Axis, I have the privilege that a lot of risk comes, non-financial risk falls under my domain. So it's operational risk is one. There is a technology risk, which is second. So what operational risk is a very wide term, and I would not classify it as a risk in its own. It is a congregation of a lot of risk. So operational risk basically is a definition. If you want definition, it is a risk due to people, process, and technology. That is how operational risk is divided. It has various categories. You have frauds, you have internal, external frauds, you have process risk, which is there. Then you have business system risk, which is your business continuity risk. You have risk in terms of the system availability risk. You have access management risk from a technology risk perspective. You have conduct risk. You have legal risk. You have outsourcing risk, which is part of the activity that we do. And again, these are small risks, which these are very bird's eye view of risk, which I'm giving. But if you drill down, there are a large part of when you call upon process risk, you have a automation risk. You have now RPA automation, which happens, that is robotic process automation. You have a manual process, you have a IT process, you have a detective preventive process. So it's fairly large, and it's the best part, it covers a large part of the organization. Nothing is left behind if I consider my area of risk. And the risk management actually starts with, in my domain, when I look at, it starts from the identification of risk. The categories of risk can be different, but the principle remains the same. How do I identify what are the risks that we run? Once we identify, we assess. Assessment means basically talking about what is the risk value to the organization? What is the quantum of risk? What is the probability of that event happening? What is the severity of that event happening? And then we qualify whether what are the controls that we have. Controls, again, you will have multiple sets of control: preventive, detective, IT manual, etc. And then you look at effectiveness of the control is also. An IT automated process does not mean that the control is strong. The control, if implemented and monitored well, then the control is strong. So IT failure can have a larger impact than a manual failure, by the way. So from that perspective, when I look at the third stage, is basically once you have identified, assessed, then you say whether you want to mitigate the risk or you monitor the risk. And mitigation also has 4 categories, and it is applicable across. So first of all, when I look at mitigation, you will say whether I will want to accept the risk. No, the cost of control is too high, so I want to accept the risk. I will take that risk with the cost of control. Additional control being so high, I don't want to put in those additions. Then the second one is you don't take that risk. So something I'll not do. I'll not do this business in that area. This product I'll not sell in this area because there is a large risk that I'll not get the payment, I'll not get the EMI, I'll not get the collection done. The third is basically, you mitigate the risk. You put in additional control. Either you automate the process, add another layer of control, some reconciliation, some process enhancement. And the fourth one is basically the transfer of risk. So when you look at transfer of risk, you transfer risk to either through an insurance, which is one of your selling points, and you also transfer risk through basically outsourcing. So when you look at outsourcing, basically outsourcing is also 3 or 4 layers of outsourcing is there. One is the financial outsourcing, which is the bank has to do. The second is the one where credit underwriting uses a large set of people like lawyers, valuers, stock auditors, and bureaus. That is again outsourcing. Market risk does outsourcing of Reuters, Bloomberg, etc., aiding them in doing the business. And the other part of, when I look at outsourcing, it's not only this, but IT outsourcing is a big area. Manpower outsourcing is a big area. So you will find all the large banks, the size of the manpower that they have as a staff and employee manpower, and the size of the outsourced manpower is almost equivalent. So that is the size, because there is a cost, there is an economy of scale. That's why we do outsourcing. And, that is how we do the mitigation part. But we have to continuously monitor the risk as well. Even after you put in the mitigation and you do the refresh, again, you go back, refresh on the identification. That's how the risk cycle moves. And there are a lot of things that plug in and play as a part of a diagram. I don't have something which I created for an internal training in my organization. I don't have it right now, but that is how the plug and play moves in. So that is how what I understand, what I would say as a risk from a risk perspective.
So Nitesh, you had touched the point of risk mitigation. So before I move ahead to the next question related to that, so I'm tempted to ask another question. Okay. I'm sitting in front of a risk expert. Do you also provide advice how to manage the risk when there is a change in management or change in boss or change in the mood of the boss?
So that is something which I don't.
we all face this. That's why we all face this.
It's, again, it's an opportunity. As I said, risk is an opportunity. Good. So if a new boss comes, if you are able to convince him that what you're doing is great, you are in the good books. But if you're saying and not doing it, then you are in trouble. So it's always a ज़्यादा बोलना नहीं है, पैर पे कुल्हाड़ी नहीं मारने का है अपना. So do what you're doing, and if you are able to convince them better, I think that's about. And we always see change. Organizations do see change in terms of senior management, in terms of board members. And recently, there are 2 risk management members who have joined in our RMCs, which is going to happen in the next week. So I'm a little scared in terms of what is going to happen. What is the perspective? Because everyone has a different perspective of risk. Their questions are different. Their mindset is different. Their strategies are different. So that is how I see. But it is important to have a very strong organization culture, because it was a light-hearted question, but I would like to give an answer that if an organization culture in an organization definitely makes a difference. Ownership and accountability is also something, if you define well in the organization, it creates a lot of influence, creates a lot of difference in the organization from a risk culture perspective.
You have given some insights, some food for thought also on a very lighter question. Thanks for it. And can you just share some of the, use cases or some case studies of risk mitigation, which in a common parlance, which we can understand?
So about 5-6 years back, you would have heard skimming happening. Card skimmer using the mag stripe. The card where there's a magnetic tape, which is there. And that used to have a static password, meaning that if somebody can swipe that, they have the card number, they have the CVV, they have your expiry date. That's all was part of that. So, and in countries where there is no second factor authentication, you can use the card. Here also in India, what happened that people started getting swiped. They used to put it in the machine. Now nobody puts in because that's not an option many of the banks have given. You will generally use the chip card. All the chip cards have been replaced since 2017-18. So if you see that amount of skimming which used to happen has gone down significantly. So that is the kind of risk mitigation that as an industry the banks had taken. And that is both sides of the coin. One is the acquiring side. That means the ATM where you are, or the POS machines where you're entering the chip card, and the guy who and the bank who is issuing the chip card. So both sides have made the life difficult for fraudster. However, the other side of the coin is all the wishings, SMS based, then app-based skimming that is continuing to grow, and it's growing at a very rapid pace. The challenge is, in spite of a second factor authentication, they are just so smart that they come up with ideas where they can easily fool people, saying that your PF is getting over, your debit card has been blocked, your reward points are getting over. If you get reward, and people, for want of greed, they get into downloading some app and which takes a screenshot. One of the things which I learned recently, not recently, about 4-5 years back, is that one of the Australian banks actually had their website cloned. Even in some cases in Indian banks also, their website. And like you have a username and password, they used to also have the mobile number. So once you give the mobile number, then all the conditions, all the areas that he can gain access to becomes very easy. Again, another thing in the or telecom sector, because there was a phone cloning, a SIM cloning, which was very rampant, which led to a lot of accounts getting blocked and their money moving out. What they have done now is any SIM card, if you go and take a SIM card or a replacement SIM card or anything, for one day the SMS will not be working. They will block the SMS. So that's basically not to allow you to do your OTP-based transaction on SMS. So these are the kind of risk mitigation. Internally also, bank do face a lot of not only fraud but process failures. Like for example, banks still struggle with TCS on LRS. That is because there is a limit of 7 lakhs, but there are multiple ways the card transactions can happen where monitoring becomes very difficult for banks as of now.
Okay. So since you have touched upon various areas of risk and say there are so many dimensions. So when you foresee so many risks, then how do you prioritize the risk?
So prioritizing the risk, as I said, the cycle that you have, when you identify the risk, basically what happens is there are two approaches to identifying risk and prioritizing risk. One is a top-down approach, which basically talks about what has happened in the past with a bias from the past. What has happened in the past, how do you take that incident and try to look at what are the possible areas of failures in the organization. It can be any organization, right? Any business, any financial institution, anywhere. The second one is the bottom-up approach, where you try to identify what are the kind of risks which are underlying on the organization in that's a risk forecasting model, the identification of risk and documentation of the risk. Then you identify which are the ones which are high severity. So tail events, for example, how do you prevent tail events? Generally by insurance. So if you have a cyber security failure, you do take cyber insurance. If you have fraud, internal fraud, you take fidelity or business insurance, business indemnity insurance. You have professional indemnity. You have D&O insurance, kind of a thing. So the bottom-up approach is basically where you identify what is the probability of that event and what is the severity. And based on the combination of factors, then you decide which are the ones which are critical to the organization. You also do a middle layer approach where you segregate the organization into multiple dimensions, which can be sales. Sales there might be different products which are high value product, low value product. For example, retail, wholesale. In retail, cards is high growing. So growth wise, whichever business is growing, digital is something which is growing. And one of the areas that I look at is digital risk, which is critical. So my prioritization on digital is something which is higher than my prioritization on something which is non-digital in nature as of now. And it depends on where the organization is growing. Is it organically growing, or growing differently as well?
You touched upon the point of sales also. So wanted to understand your perspective that generally sales is considered to be free spirited and they push for various things. They want to break. I mean, I shouldn't say break. They just want to test the boundaries also. Okay, test the limits also. So how do you recommend businesses balance risk taking and risk aversion?
So I would say, risk aversion is a very strong term to use. Nobody does risk aversion. Some form of the risk people will take. Business perspective, and whatever I give as a, whenever I do training to people, is that the risk is ownership. Risk from an ownership perspective lays in all three lines of defense. And when I say three lines of defense, I would like to clarify what are the three lines. And this is there across the organization. It is not formally documented in various parts of the organization or various categories of the organization, but generally financial sector, because driven by Basel and RBI, will have the three lines of defense. The first line basically is the primary owner of risk, which a large part of the organization being part of that. So almost 85-90% of the risk is owned by them. And people are there in that. Then there is a control function. So conduct, you have compliance risk, legal risk, infosec, operational risk, which is the second line. Credit risk, by the way, is in the first line, not in the second line. And the third one is, internal audit. So when I look at this organization structure, how do I balance and how do I say, what is the risk that? See what happens when you do a sale. Unless and until you have a very short-term approach, I get in, sales done. It is not sustainable, but push the sales. It will lie in their stocks. In a product management, distribution will have a pile-up. In a banking industry, you will have a pile-up in terms of future NPAs, etc. So when you look at that perspective, it is always better to balance out, because the time you will spend on recovery, time you will spend on, getting the customer, getting details and coming back, recovering, whether it is delinquent, whether it's NPA, is a very large time as compared to the sourcing of the business. So if you're doing intelligent sourcing, you're better off with the customers that you do business with, and also better off with in terms of your own productivity at a later stage if you're doing sourcing well. And the challenge, the biggest challenge organization faces is that the risk management team is the owner of risk. Not so. Even the information security is owned by the first line. And when I say information security, if the guy in the front line knows that this is my list of customer and he is not careful about the list, he can easily let go of the risk, which can go, the customer can go to another bank and for a financial institution. If you let go of a product specific features which are very confidential, restricted information, and you're not careful about it, that data can go to a competitor and they can replicate the model, they can replicate the product, they can push you out of the market. So it is very important to balance, and balancing comes with a culture. Unless and until the culture is there, and somewhere there is accountability which needs to be there. So even if you are a risk owner or a business owner, the risk ownership has to be at the prime, has to be given prime importance.
So, so you talked about the culture. How do you make this particular risk as a kind of sensitive matter for the entire organization, particularly the seniors? I mean, suppose there are multiple business lines, so their businesses are also there, okay. And as you rightly said, that generally it is perceived that, okay, this function is there, so they will take care of the risk, okay. So how because that's a big challenge. How do you tackle that?
So just to give an example, I'm running a organization-wide risk and compliance culture project in the bank. There are 10 or 15 initiatives that we are running. And it's a engagement. What we have done is it's not only ownership at the risk team. We only, out of the 10, 12 initiative, we own only 2. Rest of the initiative is owned by all across the organization. We are distributed management committee members to take care of certain risk areas, which are identified risk areas, and or the cause of concern for the organization. And based on that, we just 1 minute. So what we have done is we have given the ownership at a very senior level. They are given certain, and when you give ownership, you have to define what is the outcome. So as a part of the risk management, it is very important to understand that when you create a common goal between the stakeholders, even if you are part of the risk, you have to create a common goal between what is the the counterparty who is there. Whether it is an internal counterparty or an external counterparty, the common goal has to be defined. And once you define the common goal, you have to identify milestones and timelines and then run the project. So that is what we are doing. All the seniors in the organization are having that ownership of that particular area, and they are supposed to take care of that area to ensure that the operational risk and compliance culture. And we plug in across the board. So as a OR team, we plug in wherever required, even if it is certain first line controls which are similar to operational risk, first line level of control functions that are there, business control units are there, where we also engage with them to ensure that the risk management is, and it is not only the first line, it is also the third line. So we have engaged with internal audit also to do certain projects in terms of management of risk.
So is it driven through their goal sheets or off the goal sheets?
Yes, absolutely. Goal sheets, their KRAs are defined. They have a 10% risk score, 15%. Overall, I think around 20% score is on compliance, risk, and audit. So that's how their KRAs are defined. And we give inputs as a part of the annual appraisal whenever that happens.
Okay, so that percentage of rating is being influenced by the Department of Risk.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. And how far the drive from the top management, maybe senior most management, helps in this?
So what happens is, when it is not something that you only drive at the top. You have to engage with the people who are responsible for the project. The senior management are leaders, or they are the project owners, but there are people on the ground who are supposed to do that activity. So there has to be a constant engagement unless and until you, as I said, there has to be a common goal. If they are achieving something, then we are achieving. Otherwise, it will happen that, you're doing something which is for your own good, but people are not understanding. That should not happen.
So I took more time on this because at times critical and very important function like risk, which everybody know and everybody appreciates that, but implementing, at the time of implementing, they just pass the buck. So that's why I just try to understand how it is being.
So I think it has been something that we are doing since about two years now. A lot of movement in the initiatives as well. And this actually works. Helps, at least on the learning, on the ownership, on the accountability part of it, it definitely.
Good. And if you talk about a particular important aspect of current times, say, if you talk about, say, technology risk or cyber risk, whatever we say, can you throw some light about that also?
So let's say it's. I would like to divide it into 3 parts. One is, when you look at technology risk, there is a IT risk that is based on IT. I'll come to that. Then there is a cyber security risk, and then there is a information security risk. So when you look at cyber, it's something which is outside and inside threat factors, vectors which are there. And that is how you look at that. There is a CISO function in every organization who takes care of it. And there are specific areas that they monitor from a cyber perspective. Now, when you look at cyber perspective, it is more to do with VAPTs, that is, penetration testing and vulnerability assessment that people do in terms of their system, their architecture, their design, their cloud, and the infrastructure that we use. There's a large activity which happens on a supply chain. That is, the vendors who work for the organization, they are also prone to such kind of risk which are there at the bank, because they have access to bank systems in certain cases. So if a risk emanates there, that can impact the bank as well. I'm talking from a bank perspective right now. The information security risk is basically, again, something that we look at as a part of the internal organization. So there is a data protection, there are customer data protection. Then you have heard about DPPP, which is data privacy, and yeah, so rules are yet to come. And then there are other challenges which happens in terms of internal, APT that is called advanced persistent threat. So you have an organization, and there's one person who is in the organization who is like a sleeper cell. It's equivalent to a sleeper cell sitting in the organization. Gradually, putting in codes in some system or the other, which is not talking to each other. And one code will be put into the system, which will have an activation date after 6 months after he reads. And that code will activate and link all the codes that you have put in the system, leading to data leakage, ransomware attack, and all kind of DDoS attack, where denial of service. So that is basically when a website through a bot is attacked, or the bank website is blocked, because the bank can maybe take 50,000 logins in one time, but the bot is attempting 5 lakh login, 20 lakh logins. So you will not be able to access the site. That is from a cyber and information security. From a IT perspective, there are multiple factors. One is a IT outsourced risk, which is there, where you have a concentration risk. If you are having a vendor which is one single vendor providing solution, two parts to concentration risk. One, providing multiple solutions to the bank without any alternate vendor in place. The other one is one single vendor providing a very critical operation, which is critical to the bank. So if the vendor falters, then the bank is at risk. From other core IT perspective, there is a availability risk. So system downtime, one of the things which works. Then there is a access management risk. Let's say how many people in the organization has access to what kind of a data, what kind of a workflow. Let's say, for example, you are building a corporate internet banking, and the organization is not segregating the access. So a Reliance using that corporate internet banking, and a guy who is supposed to take care of corporate card for that company is able to access all their current account, savings account. That's a big risk. So access control, internal as well as external. And then there are system, when you talk about the downtime that I spoke about, access control, then you have basically the infrastructure control. So infrastructure in terms of the size, scale, then you have cloud security, which is another area, downtime, which can happen on clouds, which we have seen in the past. There was a downtime on AWS and downtime on Azure, the Microsoft Azure cloud, about 6 months back. So these kind of risk is what constitutes of the IT risk on a bigger level. And obviously, the bigger challenge in IT is also the change management risk that I missed out. So any change in the system has to be tested from a regression point of view, that what impacts the parts of the modules in that, not the statistical regression. Here it is basically the regression in terms of what change in one part of the organization in terms of system is making it impact on other set of linked applications or upstream and downstream applications. So those are the kind of technology risks that we deal with.
Okay. And if you look at the emerging risk from the financial institutional perspective, so what are the key emerging risks which you foresee?
So cyber has been one of the key emerging risks. Second one is the fraud risk, which has been rising. I would say third one is the IT risk, cloud security and IT risk from that perspective. The fourth one would be basically I would say people who have been very aggressive on AI is also running a big risk if the controls and the norms, ethical norms are not in place, where there can be a failure. Then data privacy is another risk which will come and hit us badly because we are not prepared for it as of now. Not only banks, but all institutions across India. Obviously, certain political risk is very stable, but economic risk is still there. And economic risk, especially linked to US doing certain, changes in the rates, and not doing changes in the rates is also a cause of concern. So sometimes those are the kind of risks that I see. And one is the climate risk. And I would say ESG climate risk is two parts. Two parts in terms of the short-term climate risk, which will impact your crop population, the productivity of the country, where there is a drought, there is a flooding, and these kind of climate risk that can be impacting the supply chain or the borrowers who have borrowed from you in short term. But there is a long-term climate risk as well. Let's say, for example, Chennai is a big climate risk in terms of local manufacturing of automobile manufacturing and auto parts is something which is very rampant and very strong in Chennai or nearby locations. But if the Chennai floods had a big impact on those supply chain owners, their business went bust. They could not supply, and you have seen supply chain risk going up in the COVID period, where the chip shortage led to cars not getting produced. So I think these are but there is the risk is very dynamic, and I would say dynamic why, and it has become very critical that you have to have a dynamic risk management in the organization. You have to take note of what is flowing in, what is flowing out, and as a part of risk management, you have to ignore the ones which are not relevant anymore. So very important from that perspective.
You touched upon the word AI. Okay, so I would like to ask the very popular question. So how do you see this AI and ML, artificial intelligence and machine learning, impacting the function of risk?
See, AI has been there. AI and artificial learning or machine intelligence, machine learning and AI has been there for some time. It is not something that is new. We have seen very small use cases. Now the use cases have started increasing. What I'm worried and what I'm not worried also is what I'm perplexed about is the Gen AI. That is what is something which will redefine. And I was attending one or two conferences by Microsoft, and what they have said, and one of the presentation, very attractive presentation which was there, the change management which happened because of AI is that Gen AI is like 2 years old, right? About 2 years or something like that. What the changes have seen in the past, in the last 2 years in that domain, that has been a combination of changes which has happened in the last 30 to 40 years. So that is the kind of impact that they have on that. Currently, the implementation is very, very limited to certain areas, especially, certain risk. I would say risk. Risk intelligence is somewhere where the AI will play a greater role in terms of banks, in terms of financial institutions, and obviously there would be a lot of communication-based Gen AI use, which the banks, which the product teams, and they will take up that, which has started happening. Ads being created by AI, and so. From that, and you have seen what happened with Google, so they had to pull down. So that is the kind of risk that you know is something where they can, unless you do a very ethical management of what you want to do, what are the key inputs to the model and how the model is progressing. Because once you get into that stage, understanding where the model is taking what input is very critical. And if you're not aware of that and you let the model move into a direction, the same thing will happen what happened to Google.
Yeah.
You have to pull down their AI engine because they started doing racial remarks and racial classification of their product and portfolio.
Yeah, very sensitive things also came up during that. So they
Yeah,
have to pull it down. And going forward, how do you foresee the importance of risk function in organization? Will it be same as of now? It will go down, or it will become more critical? Their importance will increase in the organizations. According to you, what do you foresee?
I think there are two aspects to it. What I see is, one is the culture of the organization. If the culture of the organization, right, if the culture of the organization will decide where the organization will grow in terms of the risk management function, and risk management function in organizations have started becoming larger. Earlier it used to be maybe 100, 200 people. Now it becomes in terms of thousands. There are people who are doing risk management across various kinds of risk management. But I would see a large part of the organization will still work on the fraud risk management a lot more. In terms of cybersecurity will still remain a large segment of that risk management. Operational risk will still remain, because market risk is somewhere where the systems have now started coming into the banks, where very complex applications have come in which are managing the risk quite well, independently of the people managing it. Obviously, the ownership remains. So risk management function is supposed to grow and not slow down. But the percolation of risk management function, the activity of risk management function can change over time. Seeing that if I see, and especially for my organization, if the people in the first line of defense start looking at risk a lot more than what we require, then I think it will, the maturity will improve. And if the maturity improves, there is a possibility that the shrinking of the risk management function as a core department in the organization may happen. But as a organization, the risk management function will definitely have a continuous requirement over the period of time, because there is so much of dynamism in the risk that we see, that it needs specialists, it needs inputs across, it needs work. Not only specialists will not help unless they do the work that is required to be done, and proactive work. So that is how I would see.
So, for example, in army, we say that most of the generals come from infantry. Okay. So in organizations, most of the say people who become MDCOs, they are from different functions. Do you see yourself becoming MDCO soon, sometime? I mean, in future? I'm not saying risk from the risk. I'm saying somebody from the risk perspective. From the risk function.
I'm not saying no. It is not that it's not possible. I have had my fair share of business as well in prior to joining HDFC Bank. May not have been a very good experience. That's a different thing. But I understand business, and based on the understanding in the first 4 or 5 years that I worked in the business, I think I got a very clear idea in terms of where I see as a risk, as an opportunity. Obviously, it's if you see people in the organization, Paresh Suktankar in HDFC Bank was almost becoming the MD. Okay. He left due to whatever reasons.
He was a pillar of HDFC Bank, definitely.
So I'm saying it is not impossible. It is possible. Obviously, there is a balance that you have to create, and unless and until a pure risk guy will definitely not be. I would not comment on individuals, but will have his own challenges when building that. But if it depends on the requirement of the organization, at what stage the organization is, and certain risks. If the organization is a little loose on risk and they need people like that, obviously somebody can become. But the probability still remains to be very minor.
But still we can see.
But it depends totally on the person, totally on the person.
Definitely.
How you change. I have seen people who have been working in risk for 20, 25 years in the organization suddenly shifted to business, and they have done extremely well. So it's a question of how you look at,
Correct. So till now you had answered very, very seriously and very diligently also, on your guards. Okay. Now I'll try to make you off the guard.
maybe before that, if there is any questions.
So
okay.
questions we can open at maybe this 5 minutes of this thing is there. Then maybe we can open for the
Okay,
questions.
fine,
Or what
fine.
do you suggest? Maybe
I'm fine with both ways. I am okay with both ways. I know we have a 5:50 p.m. So we have, if we can extend by 5-10 minutes, I am okay with that. I don't have an
maybe
issue.
if I'll just take a couple of minutes to say quickly touch upon few say a kind of rapid fire questions. Okay.
Sure.
So we generally hear the phrase "isk hai to risk hai" kind of thing. Okay. So for you, what is the preferred thing, isk or risk?
अब तो रिस्क है भैया.
अब तो रिस्क है.
अब तो रिस्क है. इश्क तो होता रहता है. इश्क का डायमेंशन चेंज हो गया है, बदल गया है. इट इज डायनामिक नाउ. नॉट सो डायनामिक बट स्टैटिक. आई वुड से स्टैटिक. पहले डायनामिक था, अब स्टैटिक हो.
And good that you clarified कि पहले बोला आपने कि इश्क होते रहता है. Then you clarified कि now it has become static. Good that because you are still sitting in your home. है ना? Second thing, so running or risk. So we all know that you are a very ardent say athlete, or athlete means you are a very active say into running and other things also, as other sports also. So running or risk?
I would say two parts of the coin. One, running is not something that I take very seriously. Because it keeps my mind very free. So after a morning run, my mind becomes very blank, and I can think about more things than, because when you're running, I don't use headphones or I don't listen to music. So I'm listening to my body, I'm seeing around. So, and my thought process actually starts building a lot. So that helps. Obviously, there is a professional part of risk management that comes into play. And having spent approximately now, how many years? 17 years risk. I think it is very critical that that also is another side of the coin. But definitely, management will continue to be part of the, even if I retire, because I want to do something which is, where I think I'll do put some thought process across my workflow, and then see where I can do, maybe write something and help organizations improve risk management. But definitely running is more of a, it makes my mind free. So
good. And if you would have not been into a risk profession and not being a risk say that specialist, then what you would have been?
I would have loved to become a wildlife photographer.
Aha. Yeah, we see that side of you
I
also.
still do photography, but very rarely get time to do it.
Okay. Do you carry your risk hat at your home also?
To some extent, yes. But limited.
Limited. Good. One thing you love the most about being a risk professional?
I think ability to, we are not taking the risk directly, right? The organization, the people on the ground takes the risk. An ability to contribute to that set of the organization from our sitting outside and helping them contribute to that is something that I love about.
Okay.
And that is my core principle, which I work with my team. My team member are very much, very clearly instructed that you're there to help that person who is growing the business, not be a cobblestone, a block in the path for them.
Good. So the mirroring question is this: one thing you hate the most being a risk professional?
Very boring. Especially in finance, it's very boring. You get, and why it is boring? In short term, you'll see a similar kind of risk flowing in. The dynamic risk actually happens over a period of time. I have seen all kind of risk now. I've not been into those activities. I have been part of credit risk for about 6, 7, 8 years. Operational risk has been, 10, 12 years on that. But the product portfolio, the changes that I've seen over the period of time is something which makes it more interesting.
Okay. So my last
Even
question.
technology risk was new to me. I started technology risk when I joined Axis Bank.
Okay, wonderful. So the last question from the rapid fire thing is last question, or maybe a kind of suggestion that would you like to share some of the or any one funny moment from your campus day, if you can recollect anyone. Before this, we open the floor for the questions.
Funny se zyada, I miss the convocation as the most hated part of that, campus days. But funny, it was funny. Matlab, whole and soul, I enjoyed the campus, throughout the period that I stayed there. The first time I went to that campus, I was stuck to it. So in spite of getting other places, I was stuck to it. So I enjoyed 100%. The holy festival, the mud, the
Jatras.
Jatra, the dance, the classroom sessions, and the canteen, and all the people who were there. Made a lot of friends, long-term friends there, and happy to say one of the friends has shifted to my they are both husband wife. They have shifted to my society only.
अच्छा, good. So मतलब अभी एक म्यान में 3 तलवार हो गई है ऐसा करके. Good. So these were the say questions, and now I would like to open the floor for questions if there are any. Participants, you can unmute yourself and you can ask the question, since there are, I think, not too many people, so you can just simply no need to raise your hand also. I think you can just unmute yourself and just shoot your question or any query or any clarification.
So Nitesh, Ranjan this side, and
Yeah.
I must say very engaging conversation so far, and you gave a lot of insights also. Thank you for that. I had two questions. One was a little, kind of professional, so to say, and the other one is personal. We all know that risk is not a four-letter cuss word now, and we have to work with risk at workplace. So one of the things which we do as a sales guy is obviously when we define risk, we say niyat or kabliyat. So niyat is something which we have to gauge. Kabliyat is something which we can see from their papers. So from your experience, Nitesh, how do you gauge a person when you are, or gauge a borrower when you are, kind of in the process of lending? Because choosing a counterparty today is very, very important, because that if you choose a wrong counterparty, you're gone in banking. And that's why we say niyat dekhna bahut important hai, काबिलियत आप फिर भी gauge कर सकते हो. So in your experience, how did you gauge or gauge a borrower? Because every borrower turns out to be a model borrower. How do you gauge a borrower in terms of their niyat? So that's one professional question. Second was, I think one of the questions which Opida also asked, which you have answered, but just an extension of that, is that how are you as a parent? Is it like you like taking risks with your kids? Or is it like you are very strict and saying that, no, these are the areas you don't have to go and these are the areas you can touch upon? How are you as a parent?
So answering the second one first is, I think, I'll attempt that first because it's right now, kid being, in the teens and the other one being in the 10s and 11s. So see, as a parent, I really, having crossed that boundary of Maslow's hierarchy, and I don't want to get into that kind of a discussion now in this, but as a parent, I feel, at this level, if you don't allow the kids to take risk, and I used to fear, very, very clearly, I used to fear going into that rides which are there, I used to fear a lot. I used to fear talking to people, in my college days also. And one of the things that I learned is when you experience fear, you are able to assess what the risk you are willing to take. If you don't experience fear, that is something. So as a part of, and recently last year we went to some, fun park, and I asked both my daughters to go into a ride which was very, very fearsome looking, very dangerous kind of a thing. But obviously you have to be a little apprehensive in terms of what are the kind of risks that they are willing to take, because both are girls, there are another set of risks that they need to take. The elder one now has to travel, so they take risks certain areas that we have to manage. So I always give the example. It's very easy to say that you don't take the risk, but you have to fear. You have to understand fear before you start learning what are the risks that you want to take. If you don't understand fear, that's where you will fail. So you have to understand that fear. What is the fear that you have that you want to do? And fear as a parent, I am saying. So there is some fear which the kids will not understand, and you can't explain it to them. So that's where you have to be a little more protective. But there are fears which they understand that we have for them, and that if they understand, they are much more careful from that perspective. So that is how very in a broad perspective I can say. On the second question, and as a part of my credit risk days, one of the things which I used to do was looking at, the intentions are somewhere very much hidden in any financial statements. The intention is there, not only in the financial statement, and I used to call it I for detail. Still call it I for detail. Because if I look at certain aspects of the financial statement, and you have to look at the period, over the period, what are the comments, the audit notes, the footnotes are the key areas where, certain people try to hide. So those are the very key important things. And while visiting a customer, it's a gut feel that when you have been an RM for so many years. So it's a gut feel which actually makes a difference in terms of what are the kind of statements that he's making, what are the explanations that are being given by him, and you have to be prepared in terms of your financial, whatever data set you have for that customer, any information which is from the, from MCA, any information that you have from the balance sheet, any information you have from bureau, any information that you have from any, I would say counterparty bank, that kind of information when you ask them, and which are difficult questions for them to answer, how they answer is something which will give you very clear indication where they are trying to hide something or they are willing to go ahead. And I think as a prudent risk manager, and in hindsight when I see, the longer it takes for them to make a decision, in some cases it makes a difference in terms of, in reality, it actually gives a wrong impression because they are not sure of what they're wanting to do with your money.
So there's another query from.
And I hope I have responded to your, but we can discuss.
Yeah, thank you, Dada. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
So there's another query from Deep. He have written in the chat. So he has said that he have asked the question. Should I read the question, Deep?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi,
You can say it loud, no problem.
Acha, well, Deep, why don't you just?
The question I have is, basically, I mean, I have not seen any IRMAn directly going into the risk management. Or probably in the campus also, when I interact with a lot of guys, what I have seen is their inclination towards going in FMCG or any other sector is pretty much, driven by the courses they undertake or the exposure they have during their internship also, right? Right now, I mean, none of the people, in fact, I have taken one survey in the existing batch, PRM 43 and 44 both. None of them are, kind of inclined towards getting into the risk management. So I don't know why. Maybe sometimes, something you are not aware of, you tend to avoid that thing. But let's say if we need to kind of offer this as a one of the option, how do we go about it, and how do we create that excitement about risk management?
Very good question, actually. One of the key reasons why people don't go into risk management, and especially in areas which are non-credit or market risk, people will definitely want to go into credit risk or market risk because they feel they are, very much in the market for jobs. Obviously, the first question is how much money people get, what is the kind of income associated with risk management as compared to a business, as compared to a sales job or a marketing job. Those are very attractive in proposition. Obviously needs hard work from both sides, and there is a growth which happens. So it is very difficult for a person to initially make a choice in terms of whether they want to go into risk management. And I would definitely, from a campus perspective, some people, even if they are interested in risk management, say for example, if somebody is interested in risk analytics, data analytics, etc., and somebody is interested in credit risk, even if they are interested, it is very important to be on the other side of the game as well. Unless and until you are on the other side of the game, somewhere the balance becomes disturbed. So if you want to propose for people to join risk management, the areas that you need to help on is what you're contributing to the organization as a person, and what you're growing, and why you want to go into risk management is something that people will take into consideration by understanding what exactly you have to do. If you explain them the job which is there, sales, marketing, very easy. Marketing, you have to do some stuff. Sales, you have to manage certain area, territory, product, etc. What happens is the knowledge of risk management across, and it is not very market. Generally, what happens in campuses which are MBA campuses, most of the people generally go into marketing because that is the kind of people who come in for the requirement. But there are banks who come in for requirements in the risk management, and there are people who are coming into risk management directly. I have had 3 MTs last year who have come from actually, doing MBAs. Also, one of them is a techie who is just passed out of IIM Dhanbad and gone into risk management directly. So there are areas which you have to make them look attractive. And how do you sell? That is again, something that you have to understand the mindset. Are you giving them equal opportunity as a salesperson in terms of financial benefits, in terms of the growth path, as compared to risk management? Obviously, there is a differentiation. The sales growth path in the initial years will see a faster growth as compared to risk management. But over a period of time, it stabilizes. And I have seen in my history of what I have done, this is, I think, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. This is my 7th job. And in the last 7 jobs, I've seen different kind of roles that I played. It also depends on the person who is taking that initiative. So both sides work deep. It is not easy for people to sell when you can't show them growth. And obviously there is a relativity. So in an organization, even today we fight on growth, where the organization will not allow employees to come into risk management because that's a cost center as compared to a revenue center. So that is one of the key things that I see. But there are some people who look at revenue, who look at risk management as a principal areas, whoever is interested. I was not a risk management person ever. I worked in an organization where I have traveled to do infrastructure advisories for 15, 16 days in a month. So I was like a core and core salesperson, even collecting money from municipal corporation and doing sales, pitching for financial advisory, etc. But it comes to a stage in life where you understand this is one of the things that you want to, and it is not something that people decide very easily.
So,
To answer, I understand from your perspective, but where you give an equal opportunity at an initial stage, that is how you have to build that. And how, what are the areas that you see as a growth perspective in risk management? One of the key areas that I see today is operational risk and IT risk has become very important as compared to the traditional risk of credit risk, market risk. But still, people even within the risk management domain, they move from one to another because they feel that credit risk is very important, market risk is high flying, and you will get bonuses which are equivalent to treasury, etc., etc. So that is how the game plays on.
So we are almost 15 minutes over the stipulated time frame, but still I think if anybody have any questions, then we can take that.
So OP bhai, just an extension of your question to Nitesh.
Yeah, sure.
When you said whether the importance of risk is going to grow, decline, or remain constant. So what I have observed in the financial industry particularly, that risk has also become a cyclical function. Like there are periods of exuberance when everything and each is okay, each and everything is okay. And then some event occurs, there are some black swan events or maybe some events which are detrimental to the industry, and all guards are put up. So I would like to ask Nitesh what in his perspective, so whether it is not good that the risk function, and I'm talking about overall risk, be it credit risk, market risk, or operational, that it remains constant throughout rather than acting on a knee-jerk thing. Like for example, in microfinance industry, there are certain cycles, something will happen, then all guards will be put up, then something, everything goes smooth and all guards are put down and everything is just hunky-dory. So Nitesh, what is your views on this?
So two ways to answer that, Amol. Excellent question, and thank you for the question. There are cyclical industry, and risk is unfortunately a cyclic industry. There is a dynamism, and one of the key areas of dynamic risk management is to understand, and I was talking about it, that you have to proactively, and my risk management cycle, and it is not something that I am able to practice now, as you say. There are incidents which happens and then we react. But the way to do it is, and how you want to do it is, try to identify dealing with people on the ground in terms of what are the areas that you see as a risk. Unless and until you get a bottom-up approach, and this is one of the things that I have done recently, is we have a set of discussion forum across the organization, branch banking being one of the biggest part of the organization, where a bottom-up discussion happens with the branch manager on a quarterly basis in terms of what they feel as the risk on the ground. What are the perceived risks? Because sometimes the risk knowledge is something which is not there. Cross-applicability of issue is something people miss out. So one part of the organization sees a particular kind of risk, but the risk mitigation has not flown into other side of the organization. That leads to a problem where, we see repeat incidents. And we see repeat incidents after 3 or 4 years of that cycle which has passed by. There are an industry where you have seen the repeat, cyclical events. Like, for example, your sugar industry, excellent example. Every 5 years, you will find the sugar prices going down, the industry in bullocks, and limits getting trashed, reduced, and, a lot of things getting changed. But obviously, that is a very critical part that you said, that the proactive behavior of risk management, a lot of data analytics needs to come in, which is a weak area in terms of risk management in the organization. In retail, definitely there are some areas where data analytics do work, but on a large scale, in terms of the wholesale business or in terms of mid-markets, the data analytics is hardly there. So early warning systems, risk assessment on a proactive basis, a lot of tools are there on operational risk, which is not there in credit risk. There is a RCSA tool which is called risk control self-assessment. But that is something that we do every year, but that is not there in the credit risk domain. They do work from customer to customer, And there's no assessment which they do in terms of which are the ones where they do assessment based on customer industry, but they are not looking at what are the nuances. Obviously, credit managers, underwriting heads are looking at that, but the proactiveness gets missed out, and there are flags. And microfinance had flags in area in the businesses that were being carried out in the way there was a evergreening of loans, etc., which was happening across, and the controls were very, very limited. Actually, the banks became like the money lenders at that point. I hope I have answered your question.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So, so I think we had very good questions also from the audience, and it's almost 5:20 now. So
6:20.
अरे sorry 6:20 अरे हाँ यार 5 बजे शुरू हुआ था. So this guy is in front of me, so he will just immediately correct the sales guy if I under report or over report my sales performance. So I think it was a very, very good session, and it was a very pretty flowing one, and Nitesh, you was very candid in sharing various aspects of it about your personal opinion also. So that way it was very enriching for me also, being a moderator. If I look at it, so I'm coming also from the financial industry, but this session was very, very you can say informative for me, and it have triggered few points also in my mind, which I'll say connect with you offline. What we say na offline iske baad mein. So and if any of the audience who is there still, so if there are queries, so obviously we can take it offline also. And so Ritu, if you are there, would you like to close it or?
Yeah, I'm
No,
here.
before Ritu, I would like to say thanks
Yeah,
to
yes, sure.
OPG for setting up the questions and asking me question as informative as I could manage, and taking cue from various answers was one of the things that I think was the best part of the discussion. And also for the quick fire, that was a surprise to me. So he just said at the beginning of the session that I'll do a quick fire. I said, okay. I hope it is not something which is beyond the boundaries. So that's okay. Great one. Thank you, OPG. And thank you everyone. Ritu, over to you.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much, guys.
Nitesh.
It was good fun. We have recorded the chat. I think Ritesh will be uploading it on the YouTube link and sharing the link on all the forums for
Okay.
people to view and watch it at a later
Okay.
time at their convenience.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you,
for the
Nitesh.
opportunity.
Thank you, Ritu.
Thank you
and
everyone for
Thank you,
joining.
Nitesh.
Bye-bye.
making
Yeah.
time out and joining.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank
Bye bye.